Representative Wright. House Bill 616. Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, members, House Bill 616 by Representative Wright authorizes the Port of New Orleans to utilize public-private partnership for certain projects, and we do have a set of amendments.
We're going to hold off on those amendments for now. Chairman Wright, on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We appreciate it. Today we come to you with 616, which is essentially a PPP process, public process. We've done this a number of times in Louisiana, a few times while I was chair of the committee when we did it before. Essentially, it allows an engagement with and to accept proposals for a public-private partnership. This process is about 3 years in the making, and I'm going to let the experts talk a bit about it as we move forward, but I would just encourage you to realize this is just a process. This is not the end result, right? So, you know, public input or things like that would come towards the end when there is an actual plan ready to go. So we could talk about that as we move forward, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Whoever's going first, please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Kane, and I represent the Port of New Orleans. As Representative Wright mentioned, this is a solution. This is a solution to make sure that when the Louisiana International Terminal is built, we have a road. Everybody's familiar with the New Orleans Airport and the backwards way of putting the road after the airport. This is a solution to make sure that does not happen and to align the road development with the Louisiana International Terminal, which is scheduled to have final permits this year and to begin construction. So what this legislation does, it does not add powers to the Port of New Orleans Authority. Mr. Escajay is here. He's executive counsel for the port and can address that. But instead what it does is it puts in place a process that allows for the P3 market to understand how we're going to move forward with the procurement. Being familiar with P3 procurements, it's really important that we send a message to the private sector exactly how we're going to deliver this project, give them confidence in that process, and to move it forward. The port has been working with DOTD. We've got a cooperative endeavor agreement that we are working on and will execute to provide technical and expertise from the department and allow for the procurement to have the proper commercial terms that will support the Louisiana International Terminal. It's important to mention that the New Orleans Regional Transportation Group is actually doing the alignment study, which has been a very public process. They're down to, I think, the final 3 or so potential alignments, anywhere from 4, I think, to 10 or 12 miles of dedicated road that will replace the trucks from being on the road to a commercial dedicated road to take them out of the traffic lane. So we will improve that process. With that, I obviously happy to answer any questions. And as I mentioned, Mr. Escajay is here to answer any questions on the legal authority that the port has and what this does to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, real quick, I wanted to add something I forgot to do, which is important, I think. This specifically is supported by $50 million in state funded dedicated by the legislature to the Port of New Orleans for this specific P3 road. And then Senator Kennedy was able to secure $15 million in federal funding for this transportation corridor as well. So there's a lot of steps that have gone into this before we even got here. Go ahead.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Jean-Paul Escajay. I'm Executive Counsel for the Port of New Orleans. To the representatives and Mr. Kane's points a second ago, the Port of New Orleans has been in existence as a public body for 129 years. Some of our language is the same today in our enabling legislation as it was in 1896 when we were created. It's very broad authority. I believe that's done intentionally so. If you think about it, in 1896 we were closer in time to the Louisiana Purchase than we are today. Our powers and duties currently are set out in Revised Statute 34, Section 21, which says that the Port of New Orleans has the power, and the duty rather, to regulate the commerce and traffic of the port and harbor of New Orleans. It also lists out specific powers, including the power to construct certain infrastructure and the ability to charge fees for the use of those facilities. As far as our ability to acquire property, 3423 sets forth our ability to do so, giving us the power to acquire property, including the power of expropriation, quote, necessary for the benefit of the port and harbor of New Orleans. It's not limited by locality, by jurisdiction, by parish, or otherwise. I would submit that our powers are broad enough to currently enable us to do this project for the roadway. However, I'm not the one being asked to come to the table as a P3 partner with millions of dollars. Fact is, we're a port authority. We're not a highway authority. This legislation gives specific authority to construct this roadway as a P3 partnership. I think all would agree that this infrastructure is necessary for the success of the project. It's necessary for the parish as a third artery in and out of the terminal, or in and out of the parish, rather, and to protect existing infrastructure of parish roadways. For the port, it's necessary to give efficient operations to get traffic to and from the terminal, out to the interstate highway system, and ultimately to its destination. And for the state, this allows more Louisiana goods to go out to market and allows more products coming into the country to reach Louisiana residents. This last point is one of the same reasons why other competing projects, in our opinion, are challenged and don't work as efficiently, because of the additional time and cost it would take to get these trucks and these containers to and from their destinations into the terminal, going through either Jefferson Parish or through downtown New Orleans. You'll hear from others about the importance, Mr. Kane and Representative Wright talking about the importance and the broad support at both the state and the federal level with funding that we've already received towards this project. Ultimately, this project is critical to the state from an economic development standpoint, and in order for us to remain a player in the international container trade. This roadway makes the project better. Better for the parish, better for the port, and better for the state. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Wright, Chairman Wright, you hit on the funding, the $65 million, the $50 million in state funds, $15 million in federal funds. Are there any other activities or levels of funding that are going on at the site to this point? Is there any that you are aware of other than that 65?
Yeah, let Mr. Kane answer that. Sorry, I think.
Yes, the project itself has secured $300 million in federal funding and $800 million in private funding for the terminal itself, and the rest to be funded by the Port of New Orleans for a $1.8 billion total.
That's correct.
For those of us who aren't as familiar with the area, what activities are ongoing or will be pursued at this terminal, at this facility? What generally?
You want to take that, JP?
Sure. So at the site, this is going to be a modern-day container terminal. So over the last several years, several decades really, but the international trade has shifted from traditional break bulk operations to containerized trades. So this will be dedicated for the large ocean-going ships as they are growing in size, coming internationally. Currently, the Port of New Orleans facilities at Napoleon Avenue, upriver of the Crescent City Connection Bridge, these ships are getting too big to access that facility. So it's been identified for decades now as a need. As Mr. Kane mentioned a moment ago, we are very far into the federal permitting process. We're over 3 years in, and we expect a permit to be issued later this year. But it's become a challenge because of the size of the vessels not being able to get under that bridge. This infrastructure has been identified and has been needed for quite some time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, I think it's important to point out, Lewis Terrell and Associates did an economic analysis on this. If we took no action, if the port did not build this terminal, the state by 2023 is going to lose over 9,500 jobs. We'll lose $205 million in tax revenue and $10.3 billion in industry value. We have to take action now, and this project aligns the terminal and the road, so when we hit the ground running.
I forgot the gentleman's name, the council.
Escajay.
You referenced the existing authority. Does this bill expand any authority that the port currently has? Is that?
No, sir. No, sir, it does not. This is specifically authorizing the roadway, like Mr. Kane said, and like Representative Wright said, to give the comfort to the public, to the private market that would be investing as a P3 developer, to be able to come into Louisiana to partner in this type of infrastructure.
Okay. Representative Brew.
Good morning. Just a few questions. Just so to be clear, because we're talking about $1.8 billion and whatnot, this is just a P3 or public-private partnership just for the corridor, right? The road.
That's
Nothing
correct.
else.
That's correct. That's
So you're not asking any for. And then you're of the opinion that you already have the power to do this, but this is just kind of clarifying that power, or did I misunderstand your statement?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay.
Like I said, I believe our powers are very broad.
Well, may I, real quick, I think what I hear you saying, and something that had kind of come up, this is not about expanding the port's power within. It's just simply you've got to set up a PPP process to be able to take, not disclosures, I keep saying proposals and things like that. So that's what the law requires us to do. We did it for the city of Youngsville, I think, when I was doing this, or a few years ago last term. This bill is required to move forward with getting the proposals and things like that, but not. The port already has the authority to do a variety of things, but we just make sure it's part of it because that is part of the port. Is that?
So the port has the ability to build the road, but it may not be clear that it has the ability to enter into a P3 contract.
Yeah, Representative Bro, the issue is that the P3 market, the private equity firms are used to seeing a set of statutory regime that they follow. And what we're proposing now is the best practices of what you would want to see in that process. So the port has the authority to do it, but we want to go out to the market and advertise that we're doing it like everybody else in the country does it, and this is the right way to do it. That's what this legislation simply does.
Okay. And one other question. Do y'all you've talking about these monies already, prioritized for this project. What's the total cost of the corridor, just out of curiosity, or is there one?
It's a great question. So right now we're waiting for the New Orleans Regional Planning Commission to come back with the final feasibility alignment, the road alignment, and depending on the length of the elevated roadway, the projection is somewhere between $400 and $800 million. And as part of the progressive P3 process, the P3 folks will take a look at that and make a determination on how we actually go about financing it from the private equity side.
And so that's in addition to the $1.8 billion for the actual terminal facility?
Completely separate.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you, Representative Brewer. Did that like an attorney. Representative Tarver. Should have let you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was thinking this way, and the last thing you talked about just made me really want to ask that question. So you're talking about a potential funding source, private equity being, who's going to pay for it, and is it going to be a toll? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Representative. It'll be a user fee that's dedicated to the commercial lane. So it'll be truck traffic that's using the port will be the primary source of the revenue that will pay for the P3 toll. That's correct.
But it does have an alternate. They don't have to go on this road.
The trucks will. We're taking the trucks off of the local roads and putting them on this dedicated roadway from the terminal to get them to the highway system as quick as possible.
So they have to pay to go on that road, even though they have no other option to.
The trucks will.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Local
about.
traffic will not have to go on this road.
I know we're getting way ahead because you hadn't even gone through all this, but this raises questions, for the future. But
that's correct, and we have been engaged with the truckers, and they will tell you, by and large, that compared to the situation they have now coming out of Napoleon Avenue and the time that it takes, having a dedicated lane is what most ports have and would prefer.
Just wanted to be clear on the where that was happening. So that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tarver. Gentlemen, the board is clear. We also have.
May I add something real
Absolutely.
quick? It was briefly mentioned, but I want to make sure everybody puts this into perspective too. We had a first-class airport built in New Orleans a few years ago, right? but we had 3 years after where we didn't have a road ready, okay? That was disgusting, quite frankly. I got called, I was on transportation back then. The people they couldn't believe it. And I think what Mr. Kane talked about is this idea of like, we want to do this the right way, especially with private financing involved. We need to lay this out so we're not in that situation again, all right? And I don't think anybody wants to be in that, right? So thanks.
Chairman. Okay, we have, while you're at the table, we're going to entertain the amendment set.
Sure.
Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, members, before you is a set of 25 amendments identified as 1266 in the top right corner. The amendments are in your folder and are available online. Amendments number 1, 12, 17, and 25 are technical. Amendments number 2 on page 2 at the end of line 5, change enhancement to improvement. Amendments number 3 and 13 changes port to port and harbor. Amendments number 4 on page 2, line 28, after construction and before the, delete of, insert a comma, and insert operation, maintenance, and any other matters that concern. Amendment number 5 changes relocation to relocation crossing. Amendment number 6 on page 4 at the end of line 6, after any, insert financing. Amendments number 7 on page 4, line 9, after corporation and before the comma, insert or company. Amendment number 8 on page 4, line 11, after any and before loan, insert financing. Amendments number 9 on page 4, line 17, after revised statute 48 256.3, insert 256.5, with the board substituted for that authority for this project. Amendment number 10 on page 5, line 9, insert endeavor agreements to implement the purposes identified in this subpart. Amendment number 11 on page 5, line 17, after contrary and before all, insert Title II. Amendment number 14 on page 6, line 27, after functions and before as, delete including. Amendment 15 on page 7, line 2, after control and before the comma, insert by the board. Amendment number 16 on page 7, line 4, after if and before aligns, delete it and insert the board determines the connection. Amendment number 18 on page 7, line 6, after roadways and before at, delete along with other relevant entities. Amendment number 19 on page 7, line 11, after project and before the, delete impacts and interconnects with. Amendment number 20 on page 8, line 14, after is and before for, delete designated and insert declared to be public property use. Amendment number 21 on page 8, line 29, after the period, insert the board's expropriation may be from legal entities that have the power of expropriation shall be permitted against the board. Amendments number 22 on page 9, line 7, after trespass and delete the remainder of the line and insert nor a taken under expropriation statuses. Amendment number 23 on page 9 at the beginning of line 8, delete domain proceeding. That concludes the amendments.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any questions on the amendment set? I'll offer up the amendment set. Are there any objections to the adoption of the amendment set? Seeing none, those amendments stand adopted. Okay, back on the bill. We have individuals present wishing to speak in support. Jasmine Brown, GNO Inc., Harrison Crabtree. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman. Jasmine Brown DeRoussel, as the Chief External Affairs Officer for GNO Inc. Members of the committee, thank you so much for your time today. We, as the economic development firm for the 10 parishes of Greater New Orleans, deem 616 as critical to the success of what we also believe the Louisiana International Terminal to be, and that is a linchpin project for the economic growth of not only our region in Greater New Orleans, but the entire state of Louisiana. And so as we think about this a little bit deeper, we urge your support of this legislation for three main reasons. One, economic competitiveness. I believe it was Representative Larvadain who said a few minutes ago that we should do whatever we can to make sure that we're maintaining the competitiveness of this region in this state. And so competitiveness is really at the helm of why we believe that this legislation is important. Maintaining our competitive edge and growing that against areas like Mobile, Houston, Port Arthur, and others, is wrapped up in the successful passage of this legislation. Must be the truth, huh?
In this building, that doesn't happen very often. I can promise you that.
Definitely a first for me. But secondly, now that we have light, let there be light. Improved access and connectivity. At the outset of this project, there were a lot of local concerns around congestion, traffic congestion, and this corridor is aiming to curb exactly that. Let's take the trucks off of the local roads and eliminate some of the congestion for those local residents. And then finally, economic impact. Of course, it's also been said what the future looks like with no action relative to this legislation, but from an affirmative perspective, this project, namely the lit terminal, is connected to about 18,000 direct and indirect jobs. And so as economic developers, we know what that means for the marketplace. This project would essentially be a marketplace magnet, and that is what we want. So with that said, we definitely urge your favorable passage of this legislation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Harrison Crabtree, director of the World Trade Center, New Orleans. And Jasmine said it, excuse me, very well, so I won't be too repetitive, but I want to note that this project, the corridor and the entire Louisiana International Terminal, is really critical to our state's long-term success. And I make the note to say it's state's long-term success. This is not a New Orleans project. This is not a South Louisiana project. This has the impact to have transformational effects across the state of Louisiana. If we look at the state of Alabama, they have been very deliberate in investing in the Port of Mobile. All of that economic development you see in North Alabama uses the Port of Mobile. So a project like this will help us remain competitive with our neighboring states, but also attract these major manufacturers across the state of Louisiana looking for that efficient transportation of their goods. Thank you.
May have been speaking the truth, but y'all talked a little too long. Representative Phelps.
No, they didn't, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just a comment, though. I really appreciate you saying it's not a New Orleans thing. It's a state of Louisiana. I love that phrase, Mr. Chairman. And we so appreciate New Orleans, but I think we all must recognize that everyone carries our state. And I've just thought I was the only one saying that. It was so good to hear you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Phelps. The board is clear. Thank you.
Thank you, members.
I'm going to read in the cards. Present in support will provide information if requested. Matt Gresham. Present in support, not wishing to speak. Chris Coulon, Lenny Kapowski, Jennifer Marusak, Christian Rhodes, Jennifer Ansardi, Captain Michael Bopp. Representative Jackson, you have a question for? Okay, 1 second. We're going to get into the opposition. We're going to start with the red cards in opposition. Present, wishing to speak, Representative Baham. If you have anyone who wants to come up with you. Present, wishing to speak in opposition, Gillis McCluskey, Ryan Randall. Y'all can come up if y'all want to come up. And then we have three more that we could take up after. Representative Baham, whatever order you prefer to go in, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Boriak. Before I go into my comments, I'm going to submit to the committee a stack of emails from St. Bernard residents opposed to this bill.
Thank you, sir, and we'll include that in the record.
And to be fair, because I represent all of St. Bernard, this is the one email I got in support of the bill from a St. Bernard resident. So I'd like to have this also entered into the record. So, colleagues, you see St. Bernard written all over this bill, but there's no St. Bernard running the bill. There's no St. Bernard running the project. What you're seeing today is something that is unprecedented since I've been coming up to the state capitol. Every parish councilman is here today. Our parish president is here today. Our district attorney is here today. A representative of the sheriff's office is here today, and we are all united in our opposition to this bill and the port in general. If you look at the digest, you'll see that the scope of this bill is a lot greater than you've been led to believe. This is talking about grabbing land nowhere near the banks of the river. And I have tracked the various plans the port has put in the newspaper showing the footprint. This footprint keeps changing. We don't know where this corridor is going to be going. We don't know whose property is going to be expropriated. It keeps changing. And if you read the digest, you'll see that they're not going to have to answer to a lot of state agencies that have our community's interest in mind. You know, we don't need to have an independent agency literally running part of our parish through this project. There are no St. Bernard voices involved. Everyone you've heard, unless I'm mistaken, that testified for this bill, they don't live in St. Bernard. You know, we talk about, oh, this is great for Louisiana. Then how come these councilmen and our parish president, we're finally just hearing from the port on the specifics of this bill today? That's no way to do business. You know, the people of this parish are against the port. They want to protect their interests. We have no say. We deserve to have a right in the destiny of our community. 20 years ago, our parish was underwater, 8 feet of water. Only 5 houses weren't flooded. We rebuilt our community. We opened our schools in November, not long after the waters receded, and were pumped out, only to have the port come in and say, we're going to do something in your community, whether you like it or not. Tough. You're going to live with it. And we have the power to do what we want. That's what this bill does. This bill blesses something. And if this were happening in your communities, I would stand with you. This is imposing something on a parish that the people of St. Bernard do not want. And I ask for you to please keep that in mind and remember that if it can happen to us, it can happen to York Parish as well. My district is St. Bernard. We are not split up in the House. I am the only voice St. Bernard has in the state capitol who is a resident of my parish. Other members of our political leadership will convey their thoughts as well. I hope you hear them out, because one day that may be you sitting on this side of the table on something affecting your community. Thank you.
Brett, please introduce yourself for the record.
Councilmember McCluskey, St. Bernard Parish, Council at Large West. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all the committee members for hearing our concerns about this piece of legislation. I want to be clear that my objection to the LIT project not is now, nor ever has been a NIMBY argument. I'm pro-economic development. I'm a pro-business person. I have led with that in mind every step of the way in my 10 years as a legislator in St. Bernard Parish. However, our concern with this project is that it is a logistical item, and it's specifically to the task of this committee that the logistics are being, I guess, underwhelmed at this point with regards to the plans for the terminal. It's been my objection all along that the road is an absolute necessity, and I want to say thank you to Ms. Cormier. I heard the author of this bill's the author of this bill state clearly for the record that we should not build an airport without a road going to it. That is what was going to happen in St. Bernard Parish. I do believe it is our objection that pushed this particular situation to the point that it's at. However, I want to make sure that this committee is aware that that's not the only component to the logistical item. There is a rail component to this project. And I've stated fully and clearly all along, of course the road is necessary, and it absolutely is. However, if we do not have rail to this project, which is one of the state's primary logistical advantages over the competing ports that are continually talked about in every single conversation involving the LIT project, we have 6 Class 1 railroads in New Orleans converging, and that's unlike any other port. And we've always listed it as an advantage for the state of Louisiana. However, we've not added any additional rail infrastructure to this project. So I would contend that building the road is not enough to say we've built an airport without a road going to it. I would contend that we are, in fact, still doing that. Primarily, my concern with this particular piece of legislation is it was presented Wednesday before Easter weekend, and I speak to you in a position of ignorance today. because I have read the bill as authored. I know nothing of the amendments. In addition to that, I haven't cross-referenced the other parts of the revised statutes that will verify the claim that this bill gives no additional expropriation power to the port. One of the things that's concerning in the bill is that it actually reduces the amount of time, or so it seems. This is an assumption. I hope the committee members will allow me this assumption, that it reduces the amount of time for objection to expropriation. So it seems to be 5 days in some parts of the bill. Now, I have not cross-referenced the rest of the revised statutes to confirm whether or not this is a copy and paste as it's been billed, but I know there's significant verbiage in this legislation that is very concerning. So I would just ask the committee to consider our thoughts from St. Bernard Parish that this is not just a NIMBY argument. This is an argument that has merit, and it has transportation at the core of our objection, and obviously the survival of our parish. There are other compounding projects that make this lit terminal at this time, without the appropriate infrastructure, very concerning for the future of St. Bernard Parish as a whole. So I would just ask that this committee consider those thoughts, and I cede the floor. Thank you.
When you're ready. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Ryan Randall. I'm Councilman District D for St. Bernard Parish. And there'll be people who speak after me who will do a much more eloquent job than I will and have a more united front from St. Bernard Parish as well. But there's 2 points that I wanted to bring up. It seems that this will strip all power from local government in St. Bernard Parish. That will completely eliminate our ability to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. That is something that all elected officials agree to when they take their oath. The second point would be to give full power to Port Nola to select the road location would be a waste of all of the money so far spent by RPC and all the public input that has been given up to that point. It would also seem to break all the promises that PONO has made to allow for public input. And like Councilman McCluskey said before me, if there is no rail included in this, the road does nothing to protect St. Bernard Parish's ability of every resident in it to move. If all of the 18-wheeler traffic is dumped on Paris Road and there is no rail variation, that rail completely blocks both of our other exits. We will be trapped. And there's multiple solutions that can be made. That road can go all the way to Florida Avenue and keep all the 18-wheeler traffic completely out of St. Bernard Parish. Or the rail can be revised to include rail traffic to minimize that blockage through St. Bernard Highway and Judge Perez. If they're both, if one is done without the other, we will, at points in time, be completely trapped in St. Bernard Parish. And I will allow the people that want to speak after me to go ahead. I thank you for your time, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Fred Avard, Councilman at Large, East St. Bernard Parish. And I want to thank you guys for allowing us to come here and speak our opinion on House Bill 616. Where do I start? Let me say by this. As Representative Mike Bayham said, if this was in y'all parish, y'all would be sitting right here. Y'all would be strongly opposing this. This bill gives the Port of New Orleans the power to expropriate with eminent domain and so much more that they shouldn't be doing. At some point, where does it stop? The governing authority of St. Bernard Parish, along with the parish president and many other elected officials, oppose the Port of New Orleans. Not because we're against economic growth, but we're for smart economic growth that fits in St. Bernard Parish. We're a small, unique community that's basically a fishing community. We have to be observant on everything we support in St. Bernard Parish because it has a negative effect. Anything you have an action, for every action, there's a reaction. And this is a bad fit for St. Bernard Parish. Louisiana can benefit off of this if it goes 30, 40 miles downriver in Plaquemines Parish. It's a better fit Keep in mind, we struggle. Orleans is threatened. Jefferson is threatened by saltwater intrusion. If this port is hit, it's so many different effects that come along with this, negative effects that come along with this port. This bill, I would respectfully ask, I would never introduce a bill that's going to affect another parish, or if I was a representative that I don't have jurisdiction in, without consulting with the local government or having a meeting with the residents of that parish. We, like Representative Bayham said, we have never seen these amendments. We're putting the cart before the horse. I could go on and on, but I'm a yield the floor to my colleague, but I'm respectfully requesting that y'all do not send this bill to the floor. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow committee members. I'm Patrice Cusimano. I represent District A in St. Bernard Parish Council. I'm not here to speak against the port. I'm here to speak against the current conditions of the development of the road and the extenuating powers that are given to the state, to the Port of New Orleans in connection with this road. On November 22nd, 2022, our parish council passed a resolution requesting that construction of the LIT not begin until a new northwest corridor was completely funded and permitted. And excuse me if I'm repeating some things that other people have said, but St. Bernard Parish, the corridor is so important to us because for those of you who don't know what our parish looks like, we are a very narrow strip of land that runs mainly east and west. We have 2 state highways that run through our parish, and we have 1 northwest corridor to get out of our parish. These are heavily traversed by our residents every single day. These are our main roads. If these trucks are allowed to use our roads, obviously the congestion would be unbelievable. So I am definitely in favor of this road should the LIT project be properly permitted and built. The importance of the road is fundamental to this whole project, because what I see as the problem with House Bill 616 is the overreaching and unfettered authority that it gives to PONO, virtually stripping St. Bernard government of its authority to govern its people. The proposal strips the protections that the parish has for their constituents. There's so many different little articles that have been thrown into this bill that I feel like it's very much overreaching. It has provisions that allows PONO to skip the public bid law with little transparency. The actual route of the corridor is unknown. As someone else said, the Regional Planning Commission had public hearings, and there were numerous routes suggested. I think there were up to 15 routes suggested, and it was whittled down to 3 different routes. But we don't know what route has been chosen, and we have no input on what route will be chosen. 2 of the 3 routes still allow heavy truck traffic to pass on our roads for at least 2 miles from where they would exit the LIT and enter into the corridor. We also have no idea what's going to be done with the railroads. Our current railroad situation is we have 1 railroad, the Norfolk Southern, that runs east and west in our parish. These are the rails that will be carrying presumably some hazardous materials through our parish, and in some points, literally in the backyards of our residents. These trains have to be rerouted. One of the choices, which I, for my own reasons, don't believe is going to be the one that they choose simply for economics, would allow this road to run straight out of the LIT to the 40 Arpent and then cross the marsh and tie into Interstate 510. It also provides that the railroad would be rerouted at the port, and it would also run to the 40 Arpent and tie in and end up in the Florida Avenue corridor, which is in existence already. So that would be definitely preferable to the people of St. Bernard. If we have to have this port, if we have to have this corridor, that would be our choice. The proposed law allows PONO to remove utilities that serve our residents. It reiterates a law that was passed in 2024 that allows PONO to expropriate land in St. Bernard Parish, which, in my opinion, is outside of their jurisdiction. That law is already in effect. The only reason I can see for reiterating that law in this bill is because this bill is to be used as a tool to attract the private entities that they're looking to help fund this project. My final thought is a warning to the state representatives and senators who will vote on this bill in its final form. This law, if passed in its current form, can be duplicated to fit any situation when the state wants to take away parishes' rights to govern their own constituents. I would ask that the committee carefully consider the items that I consider to be overreaching and remove those provisions from House Bill 616. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony. There are no questions. We have one more red card in opposition. If we can clear the table from the district attorney, Mr. Perry.
Yes, sir.
Just give us your name for the record, sir.
Sure, thank you. Hi, thank you. My name is Perry Nicosia, and I'm the District Attorney of St. Bernard Parish. I was elected in 2014. At this time, I'm asking that a sheet of paper with a diagram of the proposed facility be distributed to each of you, because I will be discussing a little bit, and that would help you to understand what I'm talking about. If I can have permission to distribute that one sheet of paper. I don't have the little fancy projector that does all that. But let me begin while that's happening. Ms. Cusimano's first sentence, and I want to be very clear here, her first sentence was, "I am not here to speak against the port." Well, I'm saying, telling all of you, I am here to speak against the port. I want to make myself very clear. There is currently litigation pending against the Port of New Orleans, filed by St. Bernard Parish government, and there's litigation filed by the St. Bernard Parish School Board against the Port of New Orleans. In addition, our own government had to sue, as part of that litigation, the St. Bernard Port. There is so much background to this. I'm not going to bore you with it. But let me be clear. If this was happening, and Mr. Baham, appreciate you, Mr. Baham, if this was happening in your parish, where they're going to build a facility of this size and of this impact, and they tell your parish, you get $0. You get nothing. Raise your hand if you want this facility in your parish. They bought property. They took away our property taxes of that property, over 1,000 acres, and you get nothing. Makes no sense. Nobody believes us. We're going to sell more po' boys, more French fries, maybe more gas stations. That's it. We get no benefit at all. Now, who wants the Port of New Orleans to come to their parish to do that? Now, Plaquemines Parish, they run their own port. They just sent a letter to the governor. They want a 50% revenue share. Let them have it. We don't want the port. Let them share the money with the Port of New Orleans. We get nothing out of it, and we don't want that in our community anyway. So I just wanted that to be clear. Now, we had to sue our own port because the St. Bernard Port gave away our land and to the Port of New Orleans at a discount of $19 million, right, because of some supposed legal debt. But nevertheless, our own St. Bernard Port, who has, by the way, exclusive, complete jurisdiction in the parish of St. Bernard. That's what the litigation's about. Who has the jurisdiction to run a terminal in St. Bernard, right? St. Bernard Parish has that. 1992 is the legislation. This legislation is contradictory to the 1992 legislation. And if you pass this, it will be fought in court. We will make sure to challenge this. So I'm just asking you to understand the depth at which this port is going to try and impact St. Bernard, right? We get no money. We're going to do it anyway. And we don't care about jurisdiction. We don't care that you used to have jurisdiction. We're going to take it back now. And now that we challenged them in court, they come up with House Bill 616. And don't think for a minute they're not going to use this as part of the litigation, as part of the intent of the legislature to say, see, in 1992, wasn't complete jurisdiction. Otherwise, the legislature wouldn't have passed House Bill 616. So I just wanted to give you a background and perspective of how this is going to impact litigation. Now I'm wearing a second hat because I'm gonna hurry up because we just sat through a lot. Now I'm here as a school board attorney, right? Because district attorneys, usually I'm here on criminal justice issues. This is my first time appearing non-criminal justice. So now I'm wearing my school board hat. I spoke to the superintendent. I spoke to the president of the school board yesterday. They asked me to come here today, and what I've handed out to you is from the Port of New Orleans website. I'd ask you to look at it real quick. And there's phases here, and the port has been at this for 3 years, mind you. They still don't have a permit. And this sheet of paper explains why they don't have a permit and why they can't get a permit and why they're asking you to pass House Bill 616. So this sheet of paper answers a lot of questions. You'll see that red circle, Phase 1A, all the way to the left. You know what that red circle is? As we sit here this morning, there's kindergartners and first graders in school right now. That's where they are. They're in class. Now, the Port of New Orleans purchased 1,000 acres. But guess what they didn't buy? Guess what they didn't account for? There's 12 acres with a little elementary school. A school that dates back to the 1940s, completely rebuilt after Katrina. And Mr. Baham was pretty passionate about how we feel having to rebuild everything. So we have a school there right now. Well, let's move forward, because the port says, look, we got Phase 1B coming. And there's nothing there. But there's a school still there. And then you go to Phase 2. Well, golly, there's still a school there, right? Well, then you go to Phase 3. Oh, yeah, Phase 3. Wow, the school's gone, right? What happened to the school? My client, the school board, knows nothing about this. How are they going to get rid of an elementary school in a community? Well, you know how they're going to do it? House Bill 616, because I think what y'all about to do is allow them to expropriate an elementary school from the poorest community that we have in St. Bernard Parish.
Plus the cemetery.
Are we really going to give them the power to expropriate a school for the first time in Louisiana history? I don't think that's what your intent is, but bear in mind, go look at Amendment 21, because I think that's what you're doing. And that's what we're going to have to fight in court. So please don't do this. Let's get back to the drawing board. Go back and reconsider what you're really doing. Let the lawyers look at it. And let's really make sure, if you really want a corridor built, like Mr. Escajay said, they got the power already. This is not about building a road, ladies and gentlemen. This is a grab. This is a school that they're trying to get, because our school board, there's a school there. They didn't come to the school board saying, here's $1. No, they didn't. They're not going to sell it anyway. They're not going to sell it for $100 million because they can't. They don't want to. There's kids there. That site is of significant historical significance dating back to the 1940s. So I don't think y'all realize the depth at which this has been going and why to this day nobody has discussed this with my client, the school board. So don't let them expropriate this land, and don't let them, Mr. Escajay already said, they have the power to do it. Let them go do it. This is a big overreach. This is something that is going to have to be fought in court if y'all do this. And it's going to cost a lot of money from the state to the port to my clients. And our community doesn't have it. We'd rather not fight this in court. We'd rather just do it the right way. They bought land, 1,000 acres, with a school in the middle. Now, what kind of developer or investor would go buy 1,000 acres and spend $70 million with a school right there? I mean, y'all just heard a bill about traffic, and you know they can't get a federal permit with a school right there. The federal government's not going to let them do that. That's why it's been 3 years. The state's not going to let them do that. They can't. That school, that neighborhood school, is just a little neighborhood school in a neighborhood. We're talking about a 1,000 square foot terminal facility surrounding an elementary school. That can't happen. So I'm just here to shed a little light and to let y'all know, one, yes, I am opposed to the port, but two, this bill is doing so many things that y'all have no idea that's being done. And I really appreciate y'all consideration to this, and to maybe table this, go reconsider it, and let's let, cooler heads prevail and do it the right way if they're going to build a port. And look, we're all about economic. All of my councilmen in our parish president, they all are for economic development. We're trying, but this is not it. This is not the way to treat a little community with the big bad New Orleans and all of their money come and grab our school and grab our land, and we get nothing. You wouldn't want it in your parish, and that's why we're all here today. Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony, sir. Representative Phelps for a question.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. Just for clarification, I think I heard everyone say they had not had conversation with the port or with the author. Was that both, or?
Mr. Bain?
I had one conversation with the representative for the port on Saturday via phone. I have had no other conversations beyond that.
Okay, and the council members, they had no conversations?
Representative Phelps, when they were notified about this bill on Wednesday, and I'm going to be honest, I was going to hear about the bill by reviewing the committee meetings. I'll go through all of the committee agendas because I'm always curious once they're posted. But it's actually a resident of St. Bernard that saw it, and then I had made an inquiry after I was notified on Wednesday about it, and there was no substantial conversations had about it.
With the council? I mean,
with
is
anybody.
That correct? Well, just the council that spoke, so there was no communication to the council to know that this bill was coming?
We had no idea till he notified the community. I want to say it was Good Friday, so I think it was Thursday or Friday? Thursday, yeah. That's when we all found out.
Okay, and when you stated that it was 3 years in the making, how does 3 years ago bring it to fruition today?
House Bill 616. We just been stuck in court and nothing has happened.
Okay,
they're
you
trying
just
to
say
get a
litigation.
permit. Yeah, they're trying to get a permit, and we have pending litigation from our government side and from the school board.
For years.
And the litigation is to go back to the drawing board or to halt the corridor that's what this bill is bringing forth?
Good question. The original litigation was filed by the parish government on jurisdiction. There's a jurisdictional lawsuit because we have our own international port. And we always, there's a lot of ports in Louisiana, right? And they have jurisdiction in their jurisdictional territory. Now, the Port of New Orleans is suggesting that their jurisdiction overlaps or allows them to overlap on top of St. Bernard, and our litigation is suggesting, no, it doesn't. The school board litigation came more recently when we realized that they really were going forward without no communication, and we have a school there. So we filed an injunction. We filed for an injunction to stop the process, which has not been heard yet. And we also allege the same jurisdictional claim on behalf of the school board. So those are pending.
That's where we are today.
And we're here today, and this bill appears to be something that will be used in litigation to suggest jurisdiction is appropriate. And we're suggesting that this bill is contrary to the original jurisdiction granted in 1992. The governor came down at that time we had 3 St. Bernard legislators, and we made a big deal out of it. And we have operated our own port since. And the only language suggesting any cooperation with New Orleans is when they negotiated that bill in 1992. New Orleans put in the bill that we could not charge less fees than them. They would set the fee because they didn't want St. Bernard to undercut the fees of the New Orleans port. So that was the negotiation. Y'all could have your own international port, but y'all can't charge less than us. We could charge more, we just can't charge less. But nevertheless, not to get off on a tangent, that answers your question about the litigation, and we found out about this bill Thursday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Phelps. Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is tough to maneuver through. I think I can speak for most, if not all, the committee members here. Several simple questions. They may not be easy to answer. Port of St. Bernard.
Yes.
Have they met and have they taken a official position on this road?
No, not about this particular bill or this road that I'm aware of. Have you had any communication?
Not on the road from them.
All right, the road in question, or the proposed road, is it some, most, or all in St. Bernard?
All.
Who are the property owners?
We don't know where the road's going to actually go yet.
There's been no plans, no.
Well, there's a proposed route, there's a proposed site.
Not that we know.
For the port, yes. The road, no.
Not the road. If there is, we don't know about it.
We have. It's been.
We'd like to know.
It hasn't been communicated to us.
When was the injunction filed?
No injunction was granted, but the lawsuits were filed last year by the school board and the year before, the summer of the year before, by the government.
Is there a particular reason why the injunction was not granted?
Let's just say we feel like we've been getting a lot of continuance requests because they don't want to fight this in court. I like my chance. Well, initially they brought it to federal court, the government suit. Initially went to federal court because they said it was a federal permitting process. It had to be in federal court. Well, we were successful in getting it remanded back to state court. That delayed it a little bit, but there's been no heavy push by them to resolve this. And you know, that's what was so surprising, that they want to tell, and I was taking some notes. You know, I wonder if these equity investors, these private equity investors, know there's a school. Like, you might want to tell them that and the litigation, because I doubt any private equity investors are going to want to invest if there's
so
litigation.
I've got to ask this, and this may come from being naive here. Rarely have I been accused of that. But the Port of New Orleans is a government entity. They meet officially. Did anybody ever go to the meeting and ask formally on the record at a public meeting, what about that school on that property you bought, and how did they answer it?
Anybody?
From the school board?
My school board members are not here. The superintendent's not here. I'm here on their behalf as the attorney, but I have no knowledge of that.
They've had public meetings at the school board that representatives from the port were present at.
And my school board has already taken a vote, like not to negotiate and to actually file an injunction to not allow any further discussions and to fight them in court. So that was a almost unanimous vote. It was 10-1. So it's strong opposition.
So there's no revenue sharing, shall we say, by the residents of St. Bernard on this particular issue, or on any particular issue regarding this?
Zero.
Unless a bunch of truckers buy Big Mac at Rockies and pay the sales tax on it. That's about it.
Right.
Has one more question then. Has anybody from the Port of New Orleans formally had a discussion with St. Bernard officials, a parish police jury meeting, a public hearing, anything such as that?
They have been town hall meetings, council meetings. There's been PowerPoint presentations.
That the port has done in St. Bernard?
Yes, yes.
And how did they get out with their lives?
They have held town hall meetings, and we did discuss our opposition to it to an extent. Actually, they held the town hall meeting at the school, Willie Smith School, and all the residents there was opposed to it. But yes, to answer your question, they did have meetings, and we did speak to them in a town hall meeting, but a one-on-one, no, we haven't.
That's where the opposition has come from. The opposition has come from all those meetings, and the more the community learns about it, the more outraged they are.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Wiley. Representative Bro.
Real quick, DA Nicosia. You said litigation's been going on with the school board for how long?
Over a year now.
Okay, and then
about a year, not quite a year. Maybe.
Well, prior to that, and how long has Pono owned this property in St. Bernard?
They acquired the first piece of property in 2020, and when did they acquire the private land property from the private landowners?
At least 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
So,
Red?
yeah, initially, the initial acquiring of property was property owned by the St. Bernard Port. That was in 2020. They did a land transfer. And then they acquired property. That's the property on one side of the school. The property on the other side of the school, they acquired from a family.
Yes.
And that was what year? 21?
2020.
Sir, please introduce yourself for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may, Sidney Torres, and I'm sitting here, and let me just, first of all, tell you that I'm a multi-generational citizen of St. Bernard. I live there, my business is there, and I'm very pro-business, and I've been involved in the nucleus of this battle for some time. But to bring it straight to what's being asked today of you, I'm sitting here, my mind is almost boggled. I have my law office looking at the bill, and for the Port of New Orleans to come here and to tell you that we already have the power, we're just doing this because we want to enter into a public-private partnership to build a roadway, I'm going to tell you is disingenuous, and that's been what we've been dealing with for 3 years. The decision you're being asked to make is to promote, to advance a proposed bill that gives unfeathered power to the Port of New Orleans. They can say what they want. If they have the power, then just go through the system and do the power. But to introduce, to have this bill considered, and we only got it during Thursday, the Easter holidays. Mike was out of town, and we've been scrambling. But take a look at the bill. Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. It is replete with empowering language that is strong. And yes, the ports had been afforded power many years ago because along the Mississippi River, there's a need to have development of ports for all of Louisiana. But that empowerment did not allow them to come in, buy 1,000 acres in a historic community like we have in St. Bernard, and say, now we're it. We're going to do whatever we want. And that's what this bill does. I also want to make another confession. Historically, I go back in St. Bernard where the Port of New Orleans has not been too kind to us. Many years ago, they said, in order to keep the ships coming up, we want to go inland. So they dug the industrial canal and made us an island. A few years after that, the Mississippi River was rising. They said, we got to avoid the perception that we're not in control here. We need to do something. Let's go dynamite the levees down in St. Bernard Parish, which they did. Destroyed my family's home, businesses, fur trappers back then. And it turned out that the science was they didn't need to do it. The science said it was going to go upriver. And then thirdly, they said we need to shorten the distance between our industrial canal in the Gulf of Mexico, and they dug the Mystico. So we know what the fight we have, and we don't expect you. I apologize for alluding to the history, but there's a lot here. And what they're asking you to do is this. Let me sum it up for you. They've been trying with a hammer to slam a round block into a square hole. They're here today asking you for a sledgehammer to do the same thing. And one last thing, there's a lot of things going on here, and haste makes waste. That's why I don't think in history the legislature, any body in the legislature has been asked to do something this strong, to give one entity this much power. And I can tell you what's driving it. Why all of a sudden after 3 years, they say they don't want to build a port without a road. Why all of a sudden 3 years later, as our council people said, they've been talking to us for 3 years. They don't even know where the road's going to go. They don't know where it's going to be located, much less the engineering and how are they going to get there. But now they're scrambling, saying, give us the authority just to go in and take whatever we need. And why are they doing that? Because, as my good friend Lieutenant Billy Nungesser has said time and time again, when are we going to get this port situation in Louisiana right? He knows the downriver merits to a port down there. And I will close with this, and I appreciate your indulgence. Hot off the press, today's editorial in a top Picayune, advocate, I still refer to as Time Picayune, please read it, in the last paragraph says, finally, the Plaquemine project is supported by a very strong expert market study, which shows it's aggressively attacking the Dallas market, which LIT would not do, and that would be a game changer for Louisiana. As a result, the Plaquemine container port would produce 5 times the container business growth over 10 years that LIT would produce in the same period. Thank you for the clarification of the record. David Vitter, former senator, lobbyist for Plaquemine Port. That's what this is all about. They're asking you to give them a sledgehammer for something that I know I know is near and dear this is to my heart. I've been scrambling. I got attorneys looking at it right now to ask you make a decision of this magnitude at this point in time. So we respectfully ask you to reject it, and for all of Louisiana, because we've always said that with the resources of the Mississippi River, we should be competitive in Louisiana with the ports, but it doesn't belong in our parish. Thank you.
But I just have a few more questions, Chairman. Thank you. And thank you for that information, Mr. Torres. That's very insightful. But Deanna Kosha, back to my question. If they bought the property 3 years ago, in that 3-year period of time, has there ever been an offer to buy this school?
No.
So you've gotten no offer of any money or anything, and they know the school's there. Okay. And then, Mr. Torres, to add to that, I'd say I represent Plaquemines, so I know what you mean by what you said. My grandfather, in fact, was a trapper himself, and, it's not just the Mr. Go, it's not just the flooding in 1927, but we also had the Bohemia Spillway, and we even have some current projects, and then on top of that, we just so happen to have the largest project in North America right now with an LNG port, and this building decided to do a P3 project on the only way we have in and out in our north-south parish compared to your east-west parish. So, Representative Baham, I feel for you. I know what it's like to be a delegation of one for one area. And if there's anything I can do to help you all, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Bro.
One more thing. I will say this. Plaquemines would be happy to take the port development.
Thank you.
But, we just need one little rail realignment, and we'd be more than happy to take it from you. We have about 3,000 acres with no school around and just marsh, and a river.
If I may, Representative Bro, we have the John Bickerman report, who was the co-author of the Millennial Report 20 years ago. It's like deja vu all over again. And there are expert reports out there that will tell you the merits of the two different ports. And by far, the Plaquemine port is the one where it would work on the West Bank, and because of infrastructure development that could be had on the West Bank that would support other development in Louisiana, and the ships wouldn't have to come 85 miles upriver because it fits within the jurisdiction and control of the Port of New Orleans where they would profit. It's time, as Lieutenant Governor Nungesser said, we have to get it right for the state.
Thank you, Representative
Thank
Bro.
you.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got some calls in my office on this matter last week, and they were back and forth on the issue. So some were for support, some were against. I am trying, I guess, maybe get some background information. Was this the original site of this particular project? Was this the original site? Or does anybody?
There was some, I guess, discussions back in 2017 of another location that the ships were too big. It was a little further up in Miro, but it was the same objections. It was just not a school there. So from the school board's perspective, it would have been a different. But there was another location that wasn't a good fit, and they moved it further down.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, are you an objection to this project, or are you objection to the location of the project? Because it's my understanding that you may have been in favor of the project when it was at a site that you might have had some interest in.
That is incorrect. I appreciate the question, by the way, but that is not correct.
Hold on, I can't hear Mr. Chairman.
The site, I'm sorry. Oh, my mic's on. The site that they were looking at there would have been rejected. It was a due diligence, but no. The important issue is that the Port of New Orleans, during the whole time, was only looking at sites that were within their jurisdiction so they could have control over it. Whereas the sites that would be workable are further downstream. And that's where we are right now with this project, because Plaquemine Parish has been vying for it. They have a partnership with some of the largest developers to do it down in Plaquemine. And the only sites that were considered by the Port of New Orleans, they considered one further down on the east bank in Plaquemine Parish, but it was all within their jurisdiction and control.
But has your position on this project changed, or has your position on the location changed?
My position has never changed. I think that the state of Louisiana should be looking at doing a container port in the appropriate location. And so I'm not against the development of a port in the proper location. And the issues are, first and foremost, the issue has to be for the state. Like if you're going to build a Four Seasons hotel, I might say, look, I got a nice piece of property. It's under my control. Build it here. You're going to look and do a due diligence to say, where should it be? And so first and foremost, for the sake of the state of Louisiana, that should be chosen. Then the second consideration where we come in St. Bernard Parish is we want to look to do these type of developments in areas that would be less impactful to communities. St. Bernard, if y'all haven't been there before, I know Representative Bro's been to St. Bernard, we've been around a long time. We're written as being one of the most historic and cultural rich parishes in the state of Louisiana. We've pulled ourselves up from the bootstraps many, many times. And while we're ready to take one for the team, not if there's a better location to put it elsewhere, and not when they're coming in to try to literally destroy our community. So I've always been in favor of it. As a matter of fact, I'm here most of the time talking about things promoting business for St. Bernard and for the whole state of Louisiana. I understand that.
Yeah, look, I hear you, and definitely sympathize. I didn't know this had become the Local and Municipal Affairs Committee, because we're dealing with a lot of local issues today.
Yeah.
But I get it. I see Kent Rogers sitting over your shoulders, and this sounds a whole lot like a project in my area, where folks are concerned about their community being usurped or decimated. And my hope is that we would have a level of consistency when we approach these type of mega projects or projects, whatever, in general, infrastructure projects, economic development projects. Because what I often hear folks is when they're in favor of it, facts be damned. Mm-hmm. But when we're against it, we want to have a compassionate argument. And I'm struggling right now between where to fall it on this issue. Because I feel like I want to make sure that I hear the concerns of the community and not encroach upon the person who represents this area. But then I also hear an economic argument, which oftentimes people roll with. And so it's really a challenge right now.
And Representative Jackson, if I may say, that's well said, and I can understand that. And I think, again, getting to the issue here at hand today is that this may be the good start of really taking a look at the Vickerman report. He's actually got 2 reports. Look at the Millennial report that he co-authored, and ask the Port of New Orleans, give us your report to support why you would destroy a community to put this when there's an alternative location further downriver. And what I'm saying is, it seems to me it's mind-boggling that they would come in and ask for this type of power in such a short notice. I mean, I know you all have read it, but read it again, just some of the language in there, the shells and the this and the that and the so forth. Like our district attorney said, this is going to end up in court, but we don't need it to end up in court. Just pause and read it and truly understand the unfettered power that they're asking you to give them by virtue of this bill.
Let me, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I have a bill being read in another committee, are there any other questions I can field from the committee before I go up to Commerce? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I respond briefly? With regard to this bill and how it's written, and with regard to my client, the school board, there's a school in the middle. And I think that's where we have to make sure, and you have to make sure, you're going to give a port the authority to expropriate an elementary school. And the poorest community that we have, they're in school right now, and they have nowhere else to go. Are we going to allow them to expropriate and ship those students and overcrowd other schools? Why give that kind of an authority? And I understand your question. Like, when it suits me, I'm okay with it. When it doesn't suit me, I'm not. Well, you know what this does? This suits the Port of New Orleans because they get 100% of the revenue. If they got to go to Plaquemines, which is a better site by all studies, they only get 50% of the revenue. So let's look at what suits the Port of New Orleans financially and why are they trying to expropriate a school and build a facility in St. Bernard. It's about the money because they get 100%, and our little community gets nothing. So I appreciate your question, and that was my thoughts when you asked it.
Representative Jackson. Okay, the board is clear. Thank you. We have other cards present. Will provide information if requested. Josh Moran, Donald Bourgeois, Louis Porez. Pomez. That's an M. I'm sorry. Look at that last name, okay? I promise you, don't take offense. I'm sorry. Justin Stevens, Cindy Meyer, Roxanne Adams, Amanda Moniz. Thank you. Okay, we also had white cards present. Will provide information if requested. Secretary Donahue and Commissioner Cormier. No, I read the cards in.
Mr. Chair, can we respond to a few things that were thrown out there?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So just a couple of things that I think are really important. It's a shame that Representative Baham left when I discussed this with you. But your chair knows that when I decided to do this bill, partly because of my time here and my experience or whatever, I was supposed to be in Pensacola this morning with my 10-year-old and my 14-year-old, right? We had a very special schedule. Y'all know that. And we had an opportunity. We weren't coming in until 5, you know. And I called the chair and I said, look, or we texted. I said, look, would you mind either handling this bill? Because I thought it's a process. It's not. We're not building the road or anything like that. Or can we postpone it a week or whatever? And he graciously agreed to take it. And then I started to see what was really going on, and I said, I can't let that man have to deal with that. So that's why I'm here. It really is frustrating that a colleague of ours didn't speak up and say, I was never asked to postpone this a week, or whatever the issue was. And I think the reason why is this. You heard it here in various ways. There's a portion that are against it no matter what. There's a portion that wants Plaquemines no matter what. Some of you who've been on this committee for a while are probably starting to see it. It took me a bit to see it when I was chairing the committee for a couple of years. We could wait 2 or 3 weeks. We could put in all the reports that have been out there for the last month or so, and we're not going to have any kind of agreement. And so the idea, I mean, I am happy to work with people and talk it through, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure you get any kind of agreement, right, for this. And again, it's a process we're talking about, right? Is it a way for them to get proposals, okay? So, like, for example, there's 3 alternatives being put together by the Regional Planning Committee, or it's not committee, it's Commission. And then, so that's part of DOTD. Every parish in the metro area in New Orleans is a part of that, okay? Port of New Orleans. Port of New Orleans has an appointee from the governor on the Board of Commissioners, okay? Like, there's a lot of things that would be easy to dispute and show you that, like, wait a second, this is not what some people are painting it out to be. So if I can, just 1 or 2 things, and then we'll leave.
Yeah, I would just quickly address the concern was that St. Bernard would get 0. That's not accurate. According to, again, the Lewis Terrell and Associates report, St. Bernard Parish is going to get $27 million annually in tax revenue. I'm not sure what their exact budget is, but I believe that's almost double their current budget. That's by 2023. It's $41 million by 2050. The state of Louisiana will receive $24.7 million in new tax revenue in 2033, excuse me, and $80.3 million. So it's not. The Port of New Orleans isn't getting all the money. That's not accurate, and the jobs reflect the same reality. 2,000 jobs for St. Bernard Parish directly, 8,500 jobs for the entire state. This is a huge economic win for everybody. This road is been asked in every community meeting in St. Bernard Parish. They want a road. We want to build a road consistent with when we're building the port. This is the way to do that. This is the correct way to do that. There's no right-of-way that's going through a active school. That's not accurate. That's not in this bill. That's not accurate. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, and also, may I add, to echo those statements, like the representative said, this is a process for building the road. There's been a lot of talk in here today about the location of the terminal itself and the impact on the school within the terminal footprint. We're talking about, in this bill, the process of building the road, which, as Mr. Kane said, has been voiced to us at every community meeting. And let me echo how many there have been. There have been 9 separate open houses over the last 3 years through St. Bernard Parish in various areas of the parish to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. This has been the number one thing that we've heard back is traffic and the need for an additional roadway. This has been inconsistent collaboration with the RPC that, as the representative mentioned, has members from all around the greater New Orleans area, including St. Bernard Parish. The route is not finalized yet because we're still awaiting the final study. It has had 7, I believe, potential routes, really 3 variations of routes that are similar to each other, but have different entrance and exit points that have been presented publicly, and those are going to be narrowed down. So while we don't have the exact route, there's a general idea of where it may go. That's not impacting the area where the school is. This is about the roadway. As far as where we are with the permit, there's a lot of speculation that's been voiced as far as why we don't have the permit. The permit is a process with the Corps of Engineers. It is a multi-year process. That was expected from the beginning. This is any project of this size and scale would take this long to go through the federal permitting process. As far as selecting sites and the reason for it with being within our jurisdiction, there was another site that was previously looked at, that the parish was engaged in. Our chairman went to the parish council and presented on this, like they mentioned, in 2017. It was not navigationally suitable. It's kind of hard to build a maritime terminal when it doesn't work from a maritime standpoint. That being said, there were sites both within and outside of our jurisdiction that were looked at. This was deemed to be the best site.
One second. Representative Phelps.
Mr. Chairman, just a few quick questions here. Mr. Representative Wright, is this in your district?
No. But St. Tammany is part of the Port of New Orleans. I mean, we're part of that metro area that deals with this. I mean, we have, yeah.
Okay. So the port asked you to bring the bill?
Yes.
And did the port speak to any of the council bodies?
The council?
Council body, the government body of the city council?
I can't speak to that, but.
No. Okay. Okay. And as I understand, there's litigation going on, so you and the port still would like to move forward while there's litigation going on?
Yep, absolutely, Representative Phelps, because this is something that's been going on for a long period of time. If a court steps in and says stop the process, then we would. But you can see, even the federal government, the state of Louisiana has dedicated money to do this. I mean, it's a long project, you know what I'm saying? And the longer you wait to at least kind of get moving on the initial subtleties, she's going to die. And I'll be honest, Representative Phelps, I saw it, heard it over the last few years. There's people that just want to, they just want to bleed it slowly, right? And that's how you kill it. And so, yes, I don't have a problem with it going that way is what I'm trying to tell you.
And so you've spoken with whom, DOTD, the secretary? What's your decision in wanting to move forward with litigation going on?
Yeah, I don't have a decision on litigation. I mean, if
No, I'm saying you're running a bill, though, so
Right.
obviously you felt comfortable enough to do that. So I'm wondering, who did you speak with to bring your comfortability to bring a bill where litigation is going on? That highly affects that, because you just said if the court say halt it, I mean, the state, the port would be halting the process.
I understand the challenge that they're going to have. The longer they wait till something like that resolves itself, it's going to be another 15, 20 years. So you need to at least take some steps. Having said all that, I mean, I've been discussing with DOTD and others for years on this project and many others. I know fully the difference between the Plaquemines project and this project. Like, there's so many things. I mean, it wasn't a point of at one point I sit down and ask a question. This was simply being a good shepherd, like many of us are, and just bring a bill through the process. And because it's purely a process, right, that I didn't have any problem with that. And I get it. I've been here 8 years. I chaired transportation, and I've worked in maritime for 15 before I left in January. So, 2 Januaries ago. What I'm saying is I think there's a comfort level that I understand it.
Okay. So you think that's why they asked you to bring it and not Rep?
You'd have to
Mayhem
ask
that's in
them,
this
but
bill?
that's my suspicion.
Okay. And lastly, well, Mr. Chairman, before my last question, how many opposition cards were there?
I read them out. I don't know how many it was.
Like
Staff
10,
accountant.
20?
Move on, staff accountant, and I'll get you the number.
Never mind. I just thought there was a rough estimate. More opposition than favors?
14, and we also received some emails.
Okay. Representative Wright, would you be willing to postpone this today, since we've heard a lot of testimony for and against and reasoning for in respect for the
Based on what I said earlier when we first came to the table, I'm going to tell you, I don't like pushing people to do votes that are uncomfortable. At the end of the day, no one asked me to push it back, and some representations have been made that, maybe would have done it. I don't know. I told you about what I was supposed to be doing today. So it's a short session. I think there's parts of this that will never be resolved. People are going to be against it or for it. I want to move forward personally. And I'd be happy to park it after here, talk with all the elected officials and say, look, let's see what about this bill specifically we can address. And then if we get it, we come up with a full vote. But I'm really disappointed with how some of this went myself. You know, I feel like there could have been some genuine conversations with me before. I mean, I told you, I talked to the chair and said I was willing to wait a week, but I didn't even get asked.
Well, with the process in this building, you know, people don't always come to the author at the last hour when they
Representative
find
Phelps,
out.
if you go look at some social media accounts, you'll know, okay? You're going to know really clearly that this could have been done back last Wednesday or Thursday. I had a conversation with a representative, in fact, the day that it was online, and another previous that way. I mean, I'm actually flabbergasted that somebody would suggest that I wouldn't have pushed it back a week.
Well, you just made a good point. If you saw that, why would that not have been your decision today? I'm not on social media, but you made the point. If you were watching social media, you didn't think that it would be better for you to have pushed it back today. Even if you didn't, I'm asking you, will you please? Because I'm very uncomfortable, and I know our votes matter. And with everyone taking the time to come here today with the things that were shared, I want the best for everyone in our state. Ports are very important to us. And I mean, I don't live there, but I feel like I do again because I love our great state. Will you please consider postponing? Mr. Chairman, could you give the expedited time, if that's okay with you, how that would look if he were to postpone first next week or tomorrow?
We have hearings scheduled between now and the end of session, so we could. That's not an issue, but I haven't heard a motion either.
I'd like to make a motion, but I want to ask the author first. I would like to make the motion to postpone this.
I'm not on the committee. I mean, that would have to be decided if you're going to make a motion. Yep.
So your motion is to defer?
Yes.
Okay. Voluntarily defer? Okay. I still have a couple questions.
Okay.
The references in here talk about a feasibility study on page 6. Is that ongoing?
That's the RPC study. We expect the final report to come out in the coming weeks.
And this ongoing study, is that where the public input, is that tailored towards the feasibility study and providing input on the potential route?
So the public input that I was mentioning, the meetings that we've had, those have been put on by the Port of New Orleans. Like I said, there have been 9 open houses. We also have 2 community advisory committees that meet roughly monthly and have an office that's been opened up in St. Bernard Parish. Specific to the road project itself, I believe there have been 2 public meetings run by RPC. I don't recall when the first one was. The most recent one was about 2 months ago.
February 4th.
Correct. Thank you. That meeting was where the 7 alignments that had been proposed for further consideration. They actually had little ticket boxes for the public to drop tickets in which ones they preferred of the recommended alignments.
We talked about federal funding being involved in this. Is the FHWA involved in this?
Is the FHWA?
The federal dollars for that Senator Kennedy it came through appropriations.
Okay. So the permits that are being applied for, those are permits to construct? Those are the core permits, coastal zone permits?
Correct, for the terminal itself.
For the terminal itself?
Yes, sir.
Not the road?
That's correct.
Not the road. Okay.
There would be a separate process for the road.
Okay. Okay. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this has probably been one of the most intense conversations we've had in my year and a half, I guess year and whatever months. We're usually in and out of here. It raises a concern to me that the representative for the area is not carrying a bill for their area that directly impacts their area. And as I struggle with where to fall on this issue. I think about my district. I have a lot of assets and resources in my district. And how would I feel if whoever are the backers of this didn't come to me and at least have a conversation? And I don't know if they had the conversation and just couldn't find the common ground with that. Was that the case? Is that how we ended up here? I don't know, but I would feel some type of way. Now, it would be different if they tried to work with their rep, but I don't want us to get away from the process that, we're duly elected from districts for a reason. And I always tell people the only people who are persons that have to go out and take account for what takes place in a district is the person he's elected from that district. And so it's a concern that the rep from this area is not in favor. And I tend to believe the pendulum swings to the left and the right. And there may be a time when all of us may have an issue that is a concern to our district, and we're going to hopefully ask for this body to support us on it. And that's where I'm really struggling with. I don't doubt the validity. I don't doubt the gravity of the project. What really has me struggling is the area that is impacted, not the representative, the representatives, the local folks are here saying this is problematic. And they're directly impacted by it. And so it just gives me a little pause about where things are. And I hope something like that, or I hope at least that is taken into consideration. Rep. Wright, Chairman Wright, do you believe if you postpone for a week, do you believe that any minds or hearts would be changed? Or
no, sir. In fact, if I could, real quick, I know there was a discussion with one of the deputy secretaries, DOTD, about doing this for all the ports. This is the first time we're doing this for all the ports. I mentioned Youngsville. I mentioned other projects like this. We decided not to. We decided to keep it just limited to the Port of New Orleans. But the whole idea of what you're saying, like, why am I doing it or whatever? Like, I totally understand why some people would not want, entities, government entities, whatever, would not want to have the rep of the area do something. And it hurts people's feelings, perhaps. I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying, like, it's not a lock solid thing, in my opinion. I get what you're saying, but my whole point is, like, this was much more about ports and PPPs and maritime than it was about specifically that road, because it's about a process. It's not about we're going to expropriate this and that kind of thing.
Correct. And I hear how you're saying how it started, right? That's how you're saying the conversation started, was a more global conversation about ports in general, PPPs in general. But here we are today talking about a specific area, and I believe the way the bill was filed, it's filed dealing with this specific area. So I get your point there, and I would agree with you if we were having a conversation more about the global conversation about ports in general, PPPs in general. I could see them going to get anybody to carry a bill, but I am struggling with this bill deals with an area that the rep seems to be either not in the loop on, and I would hate for something to happen in House District 2 and I'd be off in the winds in the dark. And I've raised that on some instances since I've been here. And so my hope is that whatever decision we make here today or going forward, that somehow the rep for the area could at least be brought to the table. I hadn't gotten into the middle of where that rep is and why I don't know if the rep for the area is against this today because they're not included or they're just against the project. Because that's something I think that we need to establish. Is the rep just against this project? And then the conversation takes a different dynamic at that point. And so I still think there's a lot to try to untangle here. And that's why I do believe maybe some level of delay or reconsideration or postponement should be in order to sort through some of these things as opposed to just kind of flying on the go. And that's just my thought. I respect you a whole lot, Chairman Wright. I think you are an upstanding man. I think you're a man of your word, but I think there's still just some things that are just need to be unpacked here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I do know there's been conversations with the senator. So with senators, right? And one of them that's related to is chair of transportation. So
well, now you know how I feel. I feel like we come to work here too.
I know.
And I said that last. I said that in the special. We come to work here too. And so I have all the admiration and respect for the folks on the blue carpet, but we serve and we're duly elected over here to do the work as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Representative Tarver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of quick questions just before I do something, but it sounds like this just sounds like a carbon capture thing to me. I don't know. So you got the local. Let me ask you this. So you want to build a port, a terminal. You want to build a terminal. You want to build a road, a toll road, private partnership to the airport. Is that correct?
To the highway, from the port.
To the highway to get to the airport.
Nothing to the airport.
Nothing to do with
the
interstate. We're just talking about the airport because you built the road to the airport. It ain't going to the airport, right?
No.
Okay. Y'all just, okay. It's not a big deal. I'm just trying to get, clear. So you building a ship terminal for the containers to bring, and then the road through this 1,000 acres. Is there not a road already there? Because you said it was going to be 3 lanes, right? And 1 lane was going to be toll, or
no, there's 3 options. So there is there's existing roads now, and all the public comments we've received, there's been a request from the locals to build a road.
Where does Highway 47 come in? There's something in there about Highway 47.
So
is that not the road you're talking about?
So in between where the property that we've acquired goes effectively from the river all the way to the 40 Arpent Canal on a north-south basis. And in between there, you have St. Bernard Highway and Judge Perez Highway. One is Highway 39, one's Highway 47. I forget which one's which. So what is proposed would be a third road that would go on the far northeastern end, I guess.
Okay,
that would
that's fine. Here's my real question. Here's my real question. This is like an $800 million project, did you say? Or $1.8 billion project?
1.8 billion is the terminal.
So why is this not that sounds like a big deal for the state, and we have a conflict here between some citizens and some government entity port people. So my question is, why is the LED, where's LED at, and the secretary and the department, where are they at in this thing? It seems like they ought to be helping to say what's best for the state in this thing. Am I missing something there? What's your answer to that, Chairman Wright? Have y'all worked with LED or the secretary, or?
I have not personally on this specific bill, right? But I know they can't put a blue card, a green card in for it. But I know they're very much aware of it, and they want the project. I know for sure on that.
Everybody wants the project. Right. The question is back, like Representative Jackson said, where are we going to put the project? So there's some conflict there. But now I'm just trying to figure out. It seemed like the state to me ought to be influencing the State Department and those. Can I ask the LED secretary or the Secretary of Transportation? They're here, and I don't know the answer to that. Is that appropriate, Mr. Chairman? I don't know.
I don't see the Secretary of LED in the room. I do see the Secretary of DOTD.
Maybe I'm sorry, not LED. The port secretary, our friend, the port.
Oh, Ms. Cormier.
Yeah. But really, LED too. I don't understand why they're not involved in this. But let me say this: y'all got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
This is a big deal, and there's a lot of conflict. But I don't know that it's our place to really put the roadblock and kill this thing. But y'all got a lot of work. You got a lot of work to do, because we're going to be 2 or 3 hours on the floor on this if you don't get some answers and get some things resolved. So I would, Mr. Chairman, make a substitute motion that we move the bill forward. Is that appropriate, a substitute motion to?
The board is clear. It's appropriate.
Okay, so that's my motion. Let's move on.
We had a motion by Representative Phelps to defer, and we have a substitute motion by Representative Tarver to report with amendments. Any objections to reporting with amendments? Rep. Phelps objects. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. Sorry about that. To clarify the vote, a vote yes moves the bill out of committee. A vote no keeps the bill in committee.
I thought Mr. Thomas was asking where was the secretary. We were not going to hear from him. I just wanted to be clear.
He didn't ask a question to him. So.
He was just rhetorical. Oh, I was waiting. That would have been.
Thanks for that word.
So, Chairman Wright, I think one thing we've established, you still have a ways to go. And I represent a parish, the entirety of the parish, very small coastal parish. And Rep. Tarver has the Port of Lake Charles in his district, but he got to come through me to get to him. And I've been in this situation before, in this building before. Was not on the winning side of that. We didn't have the population, and the port had their duty, their charge to impact the economics of the region. And so I also am torn, okay? So this is not an ideal position for any of us. But one thing I will say, and then we'll entertain the motion, this is a process in this building. You realize, you've been here longer than I think any of us on this committee. You know how far you're going to have to move the needle to get this thing to the floor in a good posture. And so I'm willing to allow you that opportunity and to visit with those folks who utilize this hearing today to vet their concerns. And I feel for them that if this is the first time they've been able to visit with you, I would highly encourage you and Rep. Bayham to have a visit along with the DA and whomever else would like to visit. I do realize we have a 60-day session, and I imagine I'm very seldom am I in favor of not ripping off the Band-Aid. We're going to hear the same concerns. It doesn't matter how many times we come back here. I don't think we're going to change the discussion. And with that, I'm going to quit running my mouth. Just felt like I wanted to, speak up for my little people in Cameron also. Ms. Devertale. Again, a yes vote is to move the bill out of committee. A no vote is to keep the bill in committee.
Chairman Boyard?
Yes.
Yes. Vice Chairman Fontenot?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Boyard?
No.
No. Representative Breaux?
No.
No. Representative Chasson? Representative Dickerson?
No.
No. Representative Jackson?
No.
No. Representative Moore?
No.
No. Representative Phelps? No. Representative Schermerhorn? Representative Spell?
No.
No. Representative Tarver?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Walters? Representative Wiley?
Yes.
Yes. 4 yeas, 8 nays.
The bill will stay in committee. We have one more item in other business, members. We have one more item.